February 5th, Leviticus 14 and 15. Leviticus 14. And Yah spoke to Moshe, saying, This shall be the Torah of the leper for the day of his cleansing. He shall be brought to the priest, and the priest shall go out of the camp. And the priest shall look and see, if the leprosy is healed in the leper. Then the priest shall command, and he shall take for himself, who is to be cleansed, 2 live clean birds, and cedar wood, and scarlet, and hyssop. And the priest shall command, and he shall slay one of the birds in an earthen vessel over running water. Let him take the live bird, and the cedar wood, and the scarlet, and the hyssop, and dip them and the live bird in the blood of the bird that was slain over the running water. And he shall sprinkle it 7 times on him who is to be cleansed from leprosy, and shall pronounce him clean, and shall let the live bird loose in the open field. And he who is to be cleansed shall wash his garments, and shave off all his hair, and wash himself in water, and shall be clean. Then after that he comes into the camp, but shall stay outside his tent 7 days. And on the 7th day it shall be that he shaves all the hair off his head, and his beard, and his eyebrows, even all his hair he shaves off. And he shall wash his garments, and wash his body in water, and shall be clean. And on the 8th day he takes 2 male lambs, perfect ones, and 1 ewe lamb, a year old, a perfect one, and 3/10 of an ephah of fine flour mixed with oil as a grain offering, and 1 log of oil. And the priest who is cleansing shall present the man who is to be cleansed with these offerings before Yah at the door of the tent of appointment. And the priest shall take 1 male lamb and bring it as a guilt offering, and the log of oil, and wave them as a wave offering before Yah. And he shall slay the lamb in the place where he slays the sin offering and the ascending offering in a set-apart place. For the guilt offering, like the sin offering, it belongs to the priest. It is most set apart. And the priest shall take some of the blood of the guilt offering, and the priest shall put it on the tip of the right ear of him who is to be cleansed, and on the thumb of his right hand, and on the big toe of his right foot. And the priest shall take some of the log of oil, and pour it in the palm of his own left hand. And the priest shall dip his right finger in the oil that is in his left hand, and shall sprinkle some of the oil with his finger 7 times before Yah. And the rest of the oil in his hand, the priest puts some on the tip of the right ear of him who is to be cleansed, and on the thumb of his right hand, and on the big toe of his right foot, on the blood of the guilt offering. And the rest of the oil that is in the priest's hand he puts on the head of him who is to be cleansed. And the priest shall make atonement for him before Yah. And the priest shall make the sin offering, and make atonement for him who is to be cleansed from his uncleanness. Then afterward he slays the ascending offering, and the priest shall make the ascending offering and the grain offering on the slaughter place. And the priest shall make atonement for him, and he shall be clean. But if he is poor and unable to afford it, then he shall take 1 male lamb as a guilt offering to be waved, to make atonement for him, and 1/10 of an ephah of fine flour mixed with oil as a grain offering, and a log of oil, and 2 turtle doves or 2 young pigeons, such as he is able to afford. And 1 shall be a sin offering, and the other an ascending offering. And he shall bring them to the priest on the 8th day for his cleansing, to the door of the tent of appointment before Yah. And the priest shall take the lamb of the guilt offering and the log of oil, and the priest shall wave them as a wave offering before Yah. Then he shall slay the lamb of the guilt offering, and the priest shall take some of the blood of the guilt offering, and put it on the tip of the right ear of him who is to be cleansed, and on the thumb of his right hand, and on the big toe of his right foot. Then the priest pours some of the oil into the palm of his own left hand, and the priest shall sprinkle with his right finger some of the oil that is in his left hand 7 times before Yah. And the priest shall put some of the oil that is in his hand on the tip of the right ear of him who is to be cleansed, and on the thumb of the right hand, and on the big toe of his right foot, in the place on the place of the blood of the guilt offering. And the rest of the oil that is in the priest's hand he puts on the head of him who is to be cleansed, to make atonement for him before Yah. And he shall prepare one of the turtle doves or young pigeons, such as he is able to afford. That which he is able to afford, the one is as a sin offering, and the other as an ascending offering, with the grain offering. And the priest shall make atonement for him who is to be cleansed before Yah. This is the Torah for one who had an infection of leprosy, who was unable to afford his cleansing. And Yah spoke to Moshe and Aharon, saying, when you come into the land of Canaan, which I am giving you as a possession, and I shall put a plague of leprosy in a house in the land of your possession, then the one who owns the house shall come and inform the priest, saying, it seems to me that there is some plague in the house. And the priest shall command, and they shall empty the house before the priest goes in to look at the plague, so that all that is in the house is not made unclean. After that, the priest goes in to look at the house. And he shall look at the plague and see, if the plague is on the walls of the house, with sunken places, greenish or reddish, which appear to be deep in the wall, then the priest shall go out of the house, to the door of the house, and shall shut up the house 7 days. And the priest shall come again on the 7th day, and look and see if the plague has spread on the walls of the house. Then the priest shall command, and they shall remove the stones with the plague in them, and they shall throw them outside the city to an unclean place, while he lets the house be scraped inside all around, and the dust that they scrape off they shall pour out in an unclean place outside the city. And they shall take other stones, and put them in place of those stones, and take other mortar, and plaster the house. And if the plague comes back and breaks out in the house, after he has removed the stones, after he has scraped the house, and after it is plastered, then the priest shall come and look and see. If the plague has spread in the house, it is an active leprosy in the house, it is unclean. And he shall break down the house, its stones and its timber, and all the plaster of the house, and he shall bring them outside the city to an unclean place. And he who goes into the house, all the days while it is shut up, becomes unclean until evening. And he who lies down in the house has to wash his garments, and he who eats in the house has to wash his garments. However, if the priest indeed comes in and looks at it and sees that the plague has not spread in the house after the house was plastered, then the priest shall pronounce the house clean, because the plague has healed. And to cleanse the house he shall take 2 birds, and cedarwood, and scarlet, and hyssop, and he shall slay one of the birds in an earthen vessel over running water. And he shall take the cedarwood, and the hyssop, and the scarlet, and the live bird, and dip them in the blood of the slain bird and the running water, and shall sprinkle the house 7 times. He shall thus cleanse the house with the blood of the bird and the running water and the live bird, and with the cedarwood, and with the hyssop, and with the scarlet. And he shall let the live bird loose outside the city in the open field, and shall make atonement for the house, and it shall be clean. This is the Torah for any infection of leprosy and eruption, and for leprosy of a garment and of a house, and for a swelling, and for a scab, and for a bright spot, to teach when it is unclean and when it is clean. This is the Torah for leprosy. Leviticus 15. And Yah spoke to Moshe and Aharon, saying, speak to the children of Israel, and say to them, when any man has a discharge from his flesh, his discharge is unclean. And this is his uncleanness in regard to his discharge. Whether his flesh runs with his discharge, or his flesh is stopped up by its discharge, it is his uncleanness. Any bed becomes unclean, on which he who has the discharge lies, and any object on which he sits becomes unclean. And anyone who touches his bed has to wash his garments, and shall bathe in water, and be unclean until evening. And he who sits on any object on which he has the discharge sat has to wash his garments, and shall bathe in water, and be unclean until evening. And he who touches the flesh of him who has a discharge has to wash his garments, and shall bathe in water, and shall be unclean until evening. And when he who has the discharge spits on him who is unclean, then he shall wash all his garments, and shall bathe in water, and be unclean until evening. Any saddle on which he who has the discharge rides becomes unclean. And whoever touches any of that which was under him is unclean until evening. And he who is carrying them has to wash his garments, and shall bathe in water, and be unclean until evening. And anyone whom he has the discharge touches without rinsing his hands in water shall wash his garments, and bathe in water, and be unclean until evening. And the earthen vessel which he who has the discharge touches has to be broken, and every wooden vessel has to be rinsed in water. And when he who has a discharge is cleansed from his discharge, then he shall count for himself 7 days for his cleansing, and shall wash his garments, and shall bathe his flesh in running water, and be clean. And on the 8th day he takes for himself 2 turtle doves or 2 young pigeons, and comes before Yah to the door of the tent of appointment, and shall give them to the priest. And the priest shall prepare them, one as a sin offering, and the other as an ascending offering. And the priest shall make atonement for him before Yah because of his discharge. And when a man has an emission of semen, he shall wash all his flesh in water, and be unclean until evening. And any garment and any leather on which there is semen shall also be washed with water, and be unclean until evening. And when a woman lies with a man, and there is an emission of semen, they shall both be bathed in water, and be unclean until evening. And when a woman has a discharge, and the discharge from her flesh is blood, she has to be in her separation for 7 days. And whoever touches her is unclean until evening. And whatever she lies on during her separation is unclean, and whatever she sits on is unclean. And anyone who touches her bed has to wash his garments, and shall bathe in water, and be unclean until evening. And whoever touches any object that she sat on has to wash his garments, and shall bathe in water, and be unclean until evening. And if it is on the bed, or on any object on which she sits, when he touches it, he is unclean until evening. And if a man lies with her at all, and her monthly flow is on him, he shall be unclean 7 days. And any bed he lies on is unclean. And when a woman has a discharge of blood for many days, other than that of the time of her monthly separation, or when she discharges beyond her usual time of monthly separation, all the days of her unclean discharge shall be as the days of her monthly separation. She is unclean. Any bed on which she lies all the days of her discharge is to her as the bed of her monthly separation. And whatever she sits on is unclean, as the uncleanness of her monthly separation. And anyone who touches them is unclean, and shall wash his garments, and bathe in water, and be unclean until evening. But if she is cleansed from her discharge, then she shall count for herself 7 days, and after that she is clean. And on the 8th day she takes for herself 2 turtle doves, or 2 young pigeons, and shall bring them to the priest, to the door of the tent of appointment. And the priest shall prepare one as a sin offering, and the other as an ascending offering. And the priest shall make atonement for her before Yah for the discharge of her uncleanness. Thus you shall separate the children of Yisrael from their uncleanness, lest they die in their uncleanness when they defile my dwelling place which is in their midst. This is the Torah for the one who has a discharge, and for him who emits semen, and is unclean thereby, and for her who is sick in her monthly separation, and for one who has a discharge, either man or woman, and for him who lies with an unclean woman.